岩石落とし。締めに攻め、相手の逃げる隙をついて相手を背負い、頭越しに投げ落とします。
This is 一本背負い投げ. You hold and control one of the arms of your opponent as you lift and throw him. 背負い投げ with your arm turned. In 一本背負い投げ, you sometimes extend one of your legs wide to the outside of your opponent's right leg.
背負い投げその2、相手の右肩を取る一本背負いです。背負い投げその3、相手の左肩を取る一本背負いです。
Kataguruma is a technique in which you haul your opponent up above you as you throw. As you can see, the throw is generally made by throwing your opponent down toward the tip of your foot. In Kataguruma, the throw can be made in any number of directions after you raise your opponent up. In this case, the opponent is thrown directly in front. It appears that this kind of throw was often used in the early days of modern judo. In this kataguruma, the body of the opponent is raised up high, and the throw is then made by bending backwards. The direction of the throws may differ, but these are all considered kataguruma, and the effect of the throw is recognized. Here you enter low on one knee, raise your opponent up, and throw him down. Kataguruma with different forms include this as well. As in Morotegari, you raise your opponent up holding both his legs, then stretching backwards, throw him down. This form is hardly ever seen nowadays, but was apparently one of the techniques in the older schools of jujutsu.
肩車その1。足元低く身を沈め、相手の下腹を引きつけ、右ももを内側から取り、担ぎ上げて落とします。肩車その2。左前隅に崩しつつ、その左外側から相手の肩、腰の力を封じます。肩車その3。踏み出てくる左足の外側に回り、その足を逆に抱えて抜き上げます。
Kibisgaishi is a technique in which you fell your opponent by taking hold of his heel. There are two ways of performing Kibisgaishi. Either by grasping the inside of your opponent's heel, or by grasping the outside. First make Seoi Nage, then turn once to face your opponent to follow on to Kibisgaishi. First, grasping your opponent's heel from outside. Catch your opponent's heel from outside as he tries to withdraw, then cut him down by pushing with your left hand. In the following case too, you grasp the heel from outside. From Kochigari, you make your opponent fall by taking the heel of the raised foot from outside. Changing your opponent's Hizaguruma into this technique. When your opponent attacks with a Hizaguruma, take his heel from outside.
左送り足払いを巧みに反らして体を沈め、片膝をつき相手の右かかとを引き払います。
You dodge your opponent's Kochigari, then drop him by twisting to either right or left. When your opponent attacks with a Kochigari, you evade by raising the foot that's been struck, then make a throw by twisting him to the left. This time, twisting to the right. Look closely at how you evade the attack and how you make the twist. Kuchiki Daoshi is a technique in which you take your opponent's leg and push him down backwards. It's often used in a tournament. You push your opponent down by taking hold of his leg, but sometimes it's executed from the inside as well as from the outside. In Kuchiki Daoshi, you may simply grasp the other's leg, or you may change it into either from your own or your opponent's technique. Here you turn from Seoi Nage and grasp your opponent's leg from inside. This is a follow-on technique starting from Kataguruma. A kataguruma is attempted, but as your opponent defends himself by shifting his weight backwards, the throw is made by grasping his leg from inside. This time we start with the opponent's osotogari. When the opponent attacks with osotogari, defend yourself by opening up, turning sideways. As you do so, catch him from inside his legs to make him fall. Here you down your opponent by catching his leg from outside. When you perform kouchigari, your opponent counters by raising the foot that's been swept from the side. Grasp his leg from outside at that moment to make him fall. This time, continuing from ouchigari. The moment your opponent raises his foot to counter the move, you catch his leg from outside to drop him. Look closely at the movement of the right hand. This is not seoi nage, but kuchiki daoshi. A continuous movement is made from a seoi nage, and your opponent is made to fall with the right hand on the outside of his leg. Turning your opponent's hizaguruma into this technique. Catching the foot of your opponent as he attempts hizaguruma, push him down with your left hand to make him fall. Morotegari is often used in a competition. There are different ways of starting Morotegari. In this case, you catch your opponent the moment you come to grapple with him. This is Morotegari, where you first pull your opponent forward. In this case, seoi nage turns into a Morotegari. When you attempt seoi nage, your opponent will react by bending backwards. Morotegari is then performed without a pause. In following on from a seoi nage, you sometimes make one complete turn, as you can see here. This also is an application of Morotegari. Here you make your opponent fall by grasping one of his feet using both hands.
Morotegari. 不意をついて相手の両ももを正面から抱え抜き上げながら押し倒します。
Obiotoshi can be considered a kind of screen-nage. It is one of the techniques of Jujutsu, the traditional martial art. Grasp the front part of your opponent's belt. Push him directly back to cause him to lose balance, lift him from the side, and throw him down towards the rear. The principle of Obiotoshi is very much like that of screen-nage. Obiotoshi is hardly ever used in modern tournaments, but is one of the techniques used in free exercises of Kodokan Judo.
片手で相手の前帯をつかみ、一方の手で後ろももを前から抱き込みます。
There are two types of seoi nage, morote seoi nage and ippon seoi nage. The hands are used differently when lifting your opponent. This is Morote Seoi Nage. Put your right elbow underneath the side of your opponent's body as you lift him. You grasp one side of your opponent's collar and sleeve. The technique used in throwing him is an application.
投げその1、相手を背負い肩越しに大きく円を描いて倒します。
Seoi Otoshi is a throwing technique where you take your opponent on your back and pull him straight down. As you throw, you can do so either with one knee or both knees on the floor. Seoi Otoshi, moving from an Ippon Seoi Nage position. In Seoi Nage, you throw your opponent by lifting him over, but in Seoi Otoshi, you throw him by pulling him down over you. Seoi Otoshi on both knees. Whether it's Seoi Nage or Seoi Otoshi is decided by whether your opponent was lifted or pulled over.
膝をついて真下に引き落とします。
Originally in Sukui Nage, you first pushed your opponent back to make him lose balance, then lifted him up and threw him in a backward direction. This technique is not at all seen in recent tournaments. In a tournament, the technique of placing a hand underneath your opponent's thigh and lifting him up is often used. When your opponent tries a harai goshi, you should pull your foot back to open yourself up for an attack, then put your hand in from behind your opponent to lift him up and throw him down. Similarly, when your opponent comes at you with an osotogari, then you should again put your hand in from behind and throw. Again, when he attempts an uchimata, you can evade his motion, then putting your hand in from behind, transform it into a sukui nage. On occasion, you may throw using your hips as you lift your opponent. Another way is to lift your opponent as he tries a hanegoshi, then throw by brushing aside his pivot leg. This time, the opponent is lifted by putting a hand in from the front. When your opponent tries osotogari, pull your foot back, then as you do so, put your hand in from the front and lift him up. Sumiotoshi is a throwing technique in which you shake your opponent off balance into the rear corner, then throw him by thrusting him down. Using your right hand, you pull up your opponent by grasping his left collar. You make your opponent lose balance by causing him to raise his left foot and shift his weight to his right heel. In another instance, you shift your grip from his left collar to the middle of his sleeve. You then push his elbow up to make him lose balance.
俗に空気投げと呼ばれているこの技は三船銃弾の草案です。自分の足や腰を相手に触れないで倒す方法はないだろうかという着想から生まれました。右後ろ隅に崩しながら身を沈め、巧みにさばく両手の働きに相手はもんどり打って倒れます。
There are various ways of executing taiotoshi depending on the situation. This is taiotoshi executed by drawing the opponent out, grabbing one side of the collar. Double motion taiotoshi. It was executed first of all by lightly kicking the inside of the opponent's foot to make him lose balance. In another instance, you might cross your opponent's arms when executing the throw. By twisting your opponent's arms, his body goes off balance and his resistance is stopped.
その1、腰を沈めながら右足で相手の立ち直りを抑え、足元に引き落とします。体落としその2、相手の下がり鼻を捉えて足元に引き落とします。玉車。私たちは足元に物が落ちると本能的にハッとします。この心理を応用して三船銃団は玉車を草案しました。体を相手の足元に捨て、右手で相手の膝を軽く押さえれば頭上高く宙に回転いたします。
When your opponent attacks with uchimata, you move your right foot back, turn and twist. The opponent, losing his target, will only hit empty air and fall, drawing a large arc as he does so. Occasionally, you may raise one of your feet up high to dodge the attack. This also is an application of uchimata sukashi. The uke or passive partner forward, goes down on one knee and pulls him down in front. The aim of practicing kata or form is to make students realize the principle behind the technique. In uki-otoshi, you sometimes step in the moment your opponent steps forward with his left foot, then execute your throw by pulling him off balance to one side of you. When your right hand is grasping the middle of the sleeve like this, you can force him to go off balance by pushing up on his elbow. Have another look. Dodging your opponent's osotogari by pulling back your leg, turn aside and then throw. This is also uki-otoshi.
右に開きながら相手を前隅に崩し、ハンドルを切るように手を働かせます。
Yama arashi is performed by grasping your opponent's collar and sleeve on the same side, lifting him up as in harai goshi, then dropping him using the hip. With your right hand placed inside the collar of your opponent, with the thumb inside, push against his right chest. Push your opponent down. Then, just as he tries to raise himself, jump in and throw him. The foot movement is similar to that of haraigoshi. Your toes should be put close to your opponent's ankle as you brush it upwards. Simultaneously, lift with the right hand while brushing upwards with the right foot, then throw in a large motion upwards.
相手の袖襟を取り、真ん前に崩しつつ引き落とします。